right, if loving you is wrong, fans, this is probably going to be one of the lengthier discussion breakdown videos all about how the hell did Carl get the photos that Eddie took from Kelly's Bible and presented it to the DA, because that's something that's been making me scratch my head for quite a while since the episode aired. I mean, me and Chandler had a lengthy discussion about it. My mom and I had a lengthy discussion about it, and we're just trying to figure out, how did he get the photos and use it in order to help Kelly get out of jail, and most importantly, have the murder charges dropped? Now, going to do my plugs real quick. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss out when I post new content to the channel. Also, links to all my various forms of social media are in the description box below. A lot of links because it's a lot of stuff, from Facebook groups, Facebook pages, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, eBay. It's all there. Also, shout out to the patrons over on Patreon. You can join the fund for as little as $2 a month for content there I don't post on YouTube. Also, if you want to donate to the channel, which you don't have to, you can do so on either PayPal or Cash App. Now, when it comes to the discussion of how Carl got the photos, I mean, there are maybe 4 potential people who helped him out with this. But here we go. Let's break down Lucien first, because this is the lengthiest one, because Chandler had an elaborate breakdown. And remember, one of the things you have to realize about this video, most of it's speculation because of the fact that we did not see Carl get the photos on screen. And as I mentioned in my video about Natalie finding out from Eddie that Kelly and Lou were kissing, I talked about, and even in the episode review, how I think it wasn't a good move to have us jump from Eddie sitting in Larry's office making the deal for the money. What was it, $50,000 in cash for the photos and whatnot. And then after the commercial break, we see Ian sitting at Lucien's desk at the police station, because there's a whole handful of events we didn't see take place. Like, did Eddie hand off the photos to Ian, or did he hand them off to Larry? When exactly did Ian go over to the police station? We knew he was meeting with Lou and Carl at the police station at 3 p.m. So we can assume that when Ian was sitting at Lucien's desk, that was around or at 3 p.m. Most likely it was past 3, because they were both frustrated about Carl not being there. And then next thing you know, Steven comes in saying, hey, the DA wants to see you. They go into the interrogation room. Larry's there as well. Next thing you know, Carl and the DA are right there together. So when it comes to the Lucien theory, going back to the previous episode when Lou confronted Eddie in the locker room about the Bible, or let's say the contraband, Eddie gets the Bible out of the locker. Lucien checks it. The photos aren't there. Eddie flushed them. So Lucien pretty much is pissed off. Is like, okay, then he leaves. Then we see Eddie getting on the phone, telling Larry about the evidence he has, which could be very interesting to him, or very useful to him, and talks about how we'll get the $200,000 for them pastors, because this is going to be something you're going to pay for. So something that Chandler was saying, that if you look at Lucien, he's been acting, because he's FBI, so you really have to judge Lucien based on his demeanor and how he acts during certain scenes. Didn't it seem a bit suspect that Lucien just automatically gave up as soon as Eddie said he flushed him? I mean, on my side of things, I was like, well, Lucien was probably in the mindset that, well, the photos are gone now. There's literally nothing he can do, because let's put it this way. Yeah, he's pissed. Let's say he kicks Eddie's ass over the fact that you flushed the photos. But if Eddie went to their superiors or whatever, it would be like, well, what's Lucien beating me up for? He was the one that allowed Kelly to have that contraband to begin with. I took the contraband because she didn't need to have it anyway. That would have made Lucien look bad. So to me, Lucien backed off, because getting mad at Eddie wasn't going to help his circumstances. He would need to find a way to help out Kelly without the photos. Chandler on the flip side was like, what about this? What if Lou pretended to leave early the way he did, just because of the fact that he didn't believe Eddie just took those photos and flushed them? So maybe he was at the door of the locker room or whatever, and he overheard Eddie over the phone. He put 2 and 2 together and figured out Eddie still has the photos. So Eddie, who I believe was about to go into the shower, because remember, Steven took him from Esperanza's house wrapped up in a blanket, and he didn't have any clothes or anything. So basically, after being in jail all night, Eddie needed to go shower. And I don't remember exactly as to whether or not Eddie was taking a shower, or sorry. I don't remember if Eddie was about to jump into the shower when Lucien came in, or if he was coming out of the shower when Lucien came in. I literally forgot. But either way, let's just, for simplicity's sake, let's say Eddie, who had just gotten out of the cell, had taken the Bible and everything, and he was going to the locker room to put on some clothes. Because I don't imagine him, walking around the police station looking like a giant, New Year baby with the blanket wrapped up around him or anything like that. I think he went basically from the cell where Kelly was at the end of the previous episode and went to the locker room after that. So basically, Lucien probably overheard the conversation on the phone. Eddie went into the shower. Now, when Eddie was in the shower, Lucien broke into, I don't know if these lockers have combinations or whatever, but Lucien probably figured out a way to open it. He took the photos because he found them in the coat pocket or wherever the hell Eddie had them. Then he got photocopies of them in the police station, because they do have that machine, because Esperance is usually around that when she's not at her desk. And then he put the photos back in Eddie's coat pocket. And you probably wonder, well, Jeremy, if Lucien took the photos and everything, why would he put them back in Eddie's pocket? Well, it's just a matter of, when you think about it, Lucien knows that if Eddie found out the photos were gone, Eddie would automatically assume that Lucien was the one that took them. And Lucien knows this is a timetable thing. Carl is coming around 3 o'clock. He has to get the photos at 3. So if Eddie is gone, because, Eddie will take the photos, go to Larry's place at the office, he knows Eddie will be away from the police station to cause any trouble, to avoid causing any trouble. So Chandler's theory is Eddie went to the shower. Lucien got into the locker, got the photos, photocopied them, put him back in the coat pocket or locker, and then that's it. Eddie then went over to Larry's office, sold the photos and whatnot for $50,000, and that's it for Eddie. However, Lucien, with the photocopies, handed off the photos and everything to Carl before Ian got there. So then when Ian got there, he can act frustrated with Ian, saying like, man, where's Carl at? You're the one who said he was coming here at 3. So then when you get to the interrogation room scene, you notice Lucien is like a background character in that entire scene. The look on his face, Larry's the one who's really being thrashed in that scene by the DA, because all the photos, all the names, all the settlements, and the affidavit, I believe, that Pat gave to Rick, who I believe Rick gave to Lucien, who gave it to Carl. So you can make the argument that, what if Lucien gave the photocopies of those photos and the affidavit to Carl, who then called the DA, and then they all came to the police station? That's a possibility. That actually does make sense. But then on the flip side, Eddie, you could think that Eddie was the one who did it, because maybe he was pissed off that, well, you know what? I'm only getting $50,000 from Larry when I wanted $200,000. So let me see if I can make some money on the side by giving to this kid who's defending Kelly. That is an interesting one, because that's within Eddie's character. Because some people might think, well, Jeremy, why would Eddie do that in order to help Kelly? It isn't about helping Kelly out. It's about getting what Eddie can get for Eddie, which is money. However, I don't think that's the case, because Carl is a rookie, but he seems to be good at what he does. But at the same time, I don't know if he would be able to get the kind of money Eddie would want. So I don't think Eddie, I honestly think for the first time, Eddie is innocent. Larry is barking up the wrong tree, thinking that Eddie screwed him over. I don't think Eddie gave copies of the photos to Carl. I honestly don't think so. So Eddie, to me, I feel is innocent. Now, when it comes to Ian, he's been playing both sides, it seems. So you can argue that, well, what if Ian was the one that gave the photocopies to Carl to give to the DA? The only possible way that could happen is if Ian got the photos somehow. But this is the problem. We don't see who Eddie gave the photos to. In Larry's office, Eddie took them out of his coat pocket and he had them like wrapped up in a piece of paper or whatever. So he put them back into his pocket before Ian left the office to get the $50,000 in cash. And then that's when him and Larry are talking back and forth. Larry keeps trying to offer him a drink, but Eddie doesn't want it. So we don't physically see who got their hands on the photos. Because if, let's say, Larry was the one who got the photos, then the only way Ian could get them is if he snuck into his desk or something when Larry wasn't looking, got the photocopies, and then gave him over to Carl, who gave him to the DA. I don't think that's the case. I mean, if Eddie, maybe Larry didn't want to get his fingers dirty. That's why it's like, hey, Ian, can you get the $50,000 from the safe? Ian, could you handle those photos for me? That way, Larry's hands are pretty much not tied to, or basically he's not leaving fingerprints, so to speak, on the evidence that, Eddie's trying to sell. So I think that Ian is an interesting theory, but I don't think it was Ian. So Ian and Eddie, I don't think so. The Lucien one does seem to make the most sense. On the other flip side, basically the final suspect here, is it Sister Margaret again? Basically because she gave the photos and information over to Kelly to begin with. So I'm thinking just because she gave those photos and everything to Kelly, that doesn't mean those are the only copies she has. She probably has more, in a journal or something like that. So I feel like, what if she gave the photos to Carl? But then again, I don't know. There are just so many things, because I feel like her giving that information to Kelly, she probably knew that, oh, Kelly will hand this over to the right people, because she does have people on her side like that nice officer Lucien and whatnot. Because if I'm not mistaken, she actually came back to the police station a second time during season 2 and spoke with Lucien, but because she felt like a conviction, I think the Lord was opening her eyes to the truth, but she left the office in a rush because she didn't want to tell Lucien anything. So at that time, I feel like she knew Lucien would help out. So giving that information to Kelly would then go over to Lucien. But I feel like Sister Margaret giving the information over to Kelly was her one and done kind of thing. Just like Pat giving the affidavit to Rick was her one and done. She doesn't want to have anything else to do with it. So while it is possible, I think maybe Lucien was the most likely person to give that information to Carl, but only if he realized that Eddie lied about flushing the photos, got the photos while Eddie was in the shower, got photocopies of the photos, and maybe Carl came down to the police station before Ian got there, or maybe Lucien was like, hey, Carl, can you meet me here like 2:45, meet up with me, I need to give you some information to give to the DA. But the way it was presented, you have the DA there who was wanting to speak with Lucien to begin with, and Larry, because Larry got called down. So Carl most likely got the photos and affidavit from Lucien, if he did give them from Lucien, at some point earlier in the day, because Carl pretty much went to the DA first and showed the information, and then the DA is like, hey, let's all meet down at the police station. So who's to say this stuff didn't went down at like maybe 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. I have no flipping idea, but hopefully we will find out, because in the next episode you have Larry offering Carl a job, but I don't know if he's going to take it, because you could make the argument, oh, Larry's going to screw Carl over. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, he might legitimately offer Carl the job, but I bet the caveat is, well, you know what, kid, you got seals. We want you to work at this law firm, but in order for me to fully accept you into this position, you got to tell me, how did you get the photos? I think that is really what Larry wants to know, in order to figure out who to take vengeance on, or at least stick the church after, like, hey, you got a Judas in your congregation. They're the ones who ratted you out. So it could be Sister Margaret. It could be whoever. So, I mean, as Carl kept saying, my sources are confidential. And it's like, how'd you do this, kid? By the power of God. Hallelujah. So we will find out soon enough. So shout out to Chandler for the Lucien theory. My mom, me and her kind of went back and forth on the Eddie one. She did potentially say Lou, but Chandler was the one that broke down the full theory. And then we also talked about the whole Sister Margaret, or maybe someone else in the congregation who wanted to, speak out. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think is responsible for getting Carl's hands on those photos? Which he present to the DA? I honestly don't think Eddie did it. Larry is going after the wrong guy, which could lead to him possibly being run over by Eddie. So with that being said, I've already done my social media plugs. Make sure you subscribe. And with that being said, I'll talk to you all in the next video.